Katie took a sip of wine and looked at the clock on the wall. It was 1 o'clock on Saturday. Usually she didn't drink this early, much less alone, but this case was special. She stared at the thin red box on the coffee table. She received it last Saturday. She has received many similar boxes over the years. They usually brought her joy. But this one was different. This one did not bring happiness. She took the box and went to her bedroom. Placing it on the bed, Katie opened the closet. She rummaged through the shoes and boxes of memorabilia she kept on the floor in the back of her closet until she found a plastic case the size of a shoebox. Opening the lid, she saw a row of boxes inside. Among them were many white, 2 silver, 1 gold, 4 blue, and 1 black. She placed the red box at the end of the row. Katie wondered why she kept these boxes and their contents. For some reason, she couldn't part with them. She randomly selected the third box and opened it. Inside were a postcard and a CD. She inserted the disc into the player, and a gentle melody began to play from the speakers. "When I Fall in Love" performed the Letterman. Katie took the card and read what was written on it. There were no names, neither sender nor recipient. There was no need for this. She already knew who sent it to her. She received it at work along with a huge bouquet of flowers. All the girls in the office gathered around Katie to find out who sent her such a luxurious gift. She smiled confidently, opened the box, took out the disc, and inserted it into the player on her desk. The girls started making fun of Katie. "Who is this secret admirer who sends you flowers and love songs straight to work?" Some were curious about what was written on the card. Katie waited until the right moment in the song to begin reading the words printed on the card. When the right moment came, she began. "When I give my heart, I give it fully, or I will never fall in love. And in that moment when I feel that you feel the same, then I will fall in love with you." While she was reading, the girls fell silent. When the music ended, they started asking questions again. Her colleague named Grace said, "This man is special. I envy you. Does he have a brother?" Katie was listening to the melody again when she suddenly looked up and saw Grace thoughtfully sorting through the flowers. She said quietly, "Today you received a wonderful gift from a special person." "Thank you. The flowers are really beautiful, aren't they?" Katie answered. Grace looked at her in surprise and was about to say something, but instead she turned around and left. This continued until the girls finally returned to work. At that moment, Katie thought for the first time that maybe she really had something special. She was sure that this would be so if not for John Williams. John was her first love. He was her first boyfriend. To those who took her to graduation, the one with whom she lost her virginity, they had been making love for the past 2 years. The last time was the day before he left for college. He always remained in her thoughts. He took a piece of her heart with him forever, which made it impossible for her to fully accept another man. After graduation, John attended Stanford University in California to study medicine. Katie went to community college back home in Florida. At first, they exchanged calls and letters. Then the letters stopped, the calls became less frequent, and later were completely replaced by emails. Soon the emails stopped too. Over time, Katie dropped out of school and got a job at an insurance company. Allstate Insurance Company. Now she works from 9 to 5 on the computer. She answered phones, sold insurance, typed letters, and did any other errands. Her days followed the same scenario: wake up, go to work, return home. It didn't bring her satisfaction, but at least it paid the bills. The only outlet was evening meetings with my friend Lisa. She kept hoping to hear at least something about John. Then she learned from his friends that he was dating a medical student. Now it became clear why he cut off all contact with her. She was depressed for weeks and fell asleep crying every night. Still, she continued to dream of what could have been. What would her life be like if John returned? She still hoped that he, like a knight in shining armor, would appear and snatch her from her boring existence, turning her into a doctor's wife. Kathy introduced herself as Mrs. Dr. John Williams. She let her fantasy and self-worth revolve around John Williams. In her imagination, he became an almost mythical figure with whom no man could compare. Weeks and months passed, but John never returned. She tried to put him out of her mind and move on, but without even realizing it, he was always a part of her life. Katie has always been an attractive girl. Not a classic beauty, but her natural sensuality attracted men. Even when she was dating John, that didn't stop other guys from trying to woo her. She was 5 feet 5 inches tall. She had long brown hair, usually parted in the middle and curled under her chin. Her skin was flawlessly smooth, with an olive tint, and her brown eyes sparkled when she laughed, betraying her Italian roots. Her breasts were full, measuring 34 cm, and she loved to wear low-cut tops that showed off her cleavage. Her waist was a little wider than I would have liked, and her butt was a little small. But her long, slender legs, like those of a dancer, completed the picture. Overall, her appearance was quite attractive. When Katie was finally convinced that John would not return, she had several affairs with men. Only one of them turned into a sexual relationship and lasted 5 months before she stopped it. Surprisingly, she felt guilty because deep down she still held love for John. Her guilt over what she perceived as cheating ruined most of her relationships. She did not have the reputation of being an easy target among men. She was 25 years old when she met Tom. He was not like all the men she had dated before. Tom joined the army when he was 18. During his 6 years of service, he was stationed in Iraq, Germany, and Afghanistan, in that order, and then left. He was an infantryman and had seen his share. Returning home to Florida, he opened a small auto repair shop near Kathy's place of work. Tom considered it fate when he saw Katie enter the workshop on her slender dancing legs. He was sitting at his desk in the office at the back, and she didn't notice him. Katie was with her best friend Lisa, whom she dropped off at work. She was wearing a low-cut white blouse with black polka dots, a short black miniskirt, and black high-heeled shoes. Tom was mesmerized. He had never seen such an exquisite woman before. "Hey," Katie called, "is anyone here?" Tom came out of the office and said, "How can I help you, miss?" Katie explained that her car wouldn't start and was parked in the insurance company's parking lot a few minutes away. It was almost closing time, and she knew he probably wanted to go home. She hoped that he would be like all the men she had met and would agree to help if she played with her charms a little. While telling him exactly where her car was parked, she accidentally dropped her keys and, bending down to pick them up, allowed her chest to lean forward, giving him an excellent view. When she straightened up again, she saw the desire in his eyes and knew she had him. She chuckled to herself. It was too easy. Tom could hardly take his eyes off her cleavage. When he finally managed and looked into her eyes, she pouted and sweetly asked if he would help her. Tom looked at her soft, full lips and wondered what it would be like to kiss them. He faltered as he answered that he would get a tow truck, take her car, and inspect it. As the girls followed him to the truck, they exchanged knowing glances. They have repeatedly used their appearance to control men. He helped her climb into the cabin, getting an excellent view of her slender legs. Lisa, getting into the car, gave him the same performance. As Tom started the engine and headed towards her car, Katie took a moment to look him over. She noticed his strong, muscular arms that tensed as he changed gears. By the tension of the fabric of his trousers, one could understand that his legs were also short, but powerful. His black hair was cut short and combed back. When he turned to her with a confident, reassuring smile, she noticed his kind green eyes and full, soft lips. She felt the pull and thought it would be fun to play with him a little. Of course, this wouldn't go far. He was just a mechanic, and his work clearly wasn't up to her standards. But it could be fun for a while. When they reached the parking lot, Tom opened the hood of her Camry. After inspecting the engine, he noticed that the ground wire had come loose. A couple of moves with the screwdriver, and he told her to try starting the car. Katie was surprised to see that the engine started working immediately. She gave Tom a dazzling smile, and he smiled back, desperately trying to find a reason to detain her for just one more minute. "How much do I owe you for repairs?" she asked. Tom refused to take the money. "Your smile is already a sufficient reward," he said. Katie looked into his green eyes, came closer, and kissed his cheek. "Thank you very much," she said. She saw him blush, and it amused her. As she walked towards the car, she suddenly turned around. Maybe tomorrow night I'll have dinner as payment for the repairs. His eyes widened in surprise, but the smile did not leave his face. Yes, with pleasure, he replied. For a moment, John flashed through her thoughts, and she felt a slight regret, but it immediately disappeared. There was something special about this man she had only known for an hour. She felt that she could trust him. He intrigued her. She had a hunch that he wouldn't remain a mechanic for long, and her hunches were rarely wrong. Taking the business card out of her purse, she smiled and handed it to Tom. "Call me tomorrow. I will explain how to get to you." Running her hand over his cheek, she added, "Thank you again for helping me today." She turned and walked away, swaying her hips a little more. Looking back, she noticed with satisfaction that her maneuver was a success. He remained rooted to the spot, watching her. She smiled again and left. When Tom finally came to his senses, he smiled widely as he got into the truck. He will definitely call her tomorrow. In fact, he was impatient. As soon as the car left the parking lot, Lisa rushed to Katie. "Are you crazy? You don't know him at all. What if he's some kind of maniac with an axe? And anyway, you don't date people like him." Katie calmly replied, "You know where he works. If anything happens, you can tell the police who I was with. And in general, I'm sure he's a normal guy." Lisa reluctantly agreed. "Okay, but you have to call me after the date. And I need details too." Both girls laughed and ran further down the road. She told him to be at her apartment by 7 in the evening. He arrived at 6:45, but waited outside until 7 so as not to appear too impatient, although he was eager to see her again. He knocked on the door and stood waiting. Katie was stirring the sauce on the stove when she heard a knock. She went to the mirror, straightened her clothes, and waited. When the knock came again, she smiled. Outside, Tom was starting to worry. What if she changed her mind? He knocked again. On the third knock, Katie smiled again. A little waiting always unsettles men, giving them a slight insecurity. Katie called out, "I'll be there now." Tom was relieved when the door swung open and Katie appeared in the doorway, smiling at him. She invited him inside, and he handed her a bottle of wine and a small bouquet of flowers. Katie thanked him for the gifts, especially admiring the flowers, and placed them in a vase on the table where they were going to have dinner. Tom admired her beauty while she trimmed the stems and put flowers in a vase. She was wearing a white button-down blouse with the top 3 buttons undone. The blouse was tucked into tight black jeans. She was barefoot. For some reason, Tom found this particularly attractive. Her bare feet in combination with tight jeans seemed incredibly erotic to him, and he suddenly felt a strong desire for this woman, whom, in fact, he had only known for a few hours. For dinner, Katie made chicken cacciator over spaghetti with her own homemade sauce. The food was amazing. Tom hasn't eaten homemade food for a long time. But even more than the dinner itself, he was fascinated by the conversation. They told each other about their past, shared dreams about the future. Tom learned that Katie went to college and has a creative streak. She took painting courses and was excellent at watercolors. There were even several of her own works hanging in her small home. Katie listened to Tom's stories about his time in the army, some of them so harsh that she involuntarily shuddered. Tears appeared in her eyes when she heard the pain in his voice. Gradually, she learned that Tom was not just a mechanic in a small car service, but the owner of 3 workshops in the city. He had contracts with a large car rental company to maintain their fleet. He also worked with U.S. government, the insurance company where Kathy worked, and several other clients. His largest workshop consisted of 10 work boxes. The second was exclusively engaged in tuning cars, and the third, the same one that Katie accidentally looked into, specialized in repairing expensive cars such as Ferrari and Lamborghini. This was his favorite workshop because it was where he started. At the back of the building was his small office, where he kept the books for all 3 workshops. That day, he was there to finish some paperwork when Katie walked in. Usually, he closed the workshop before this, but for some reason, he forgot to do it that evening. Tom told Katie that he was very happy about this forgettable moment. He told her where he lived, proudly describing his three-room house on the outskirts of the city, which he bought 2 years ago. It looks like Katie was right in her guesses. They had dinner, drank wine, talked, played board games, enjoying each other's company more and more. As the evening drew to a close, Katie dared to invite Tom to stay for a little while. He wasn't sure what exactly she meant, but he quickly made up his mind. Tom walked up to Katie, hugged her, and kissed her passionately, then pulled away a little and said quietly, "I can't stay." Katie whispered, "Don't you like me?" "On the contrary, Katie, I really like you. Even more than just liking you. But I see something more in you. Yes, we have only known each other for a short time, but I already feel that we could have a future. I want to get to know you better. I want us to take our time and understand where we are going. I don't want intimacy to complicate things. Plus, waiting will only enhance the pleasure if we decide to take it to the next level. You understand?" Katie had never experienced rejection before, but it didn't seem like a refusal. It was a promise of something more. This was a chance for something real and lasting. For the first time in a long time, she felt confident in a man. This man knew what he wanted, and she was sure that he wanted her. But he wanted her to be sure of it too. She made up her mind and said, "Not many men who reject me get a second chance. But you, perhaps, can be an exception." And yes, I understood everything. That night Tom went home and went to bed, but could not sleep. All he thought about was the beautiful woman he rejected today. His imagination painted pictures of what they could be doing right now. He tossed and turned, tormented by the thought of whether he was a complete fool. Sleep did not come soon. Katie changed into her pajamas, but had to fulfill her promise to Lisa before going to bed. She called her friend and told her about everything. About the evening, about the mutual attraction, about the chemistry that arose between them. And then she admitted, "You know, I invited him to stay." "You invited him to stay? Are you crazy? You just met him today." Lisa was indignant. Katie sighed. "Don't worry," he refused. Lisa was even more amazed. "Does he like men?" Katie laughed. Judging by the farewell kiss, definitely not. While Tom suffered without sleep, Katie slept like a child. She didn't feel lonely. She felt his presence. In a sense, he really was there. He has already settled in her heart. She remembered how tightly he hugged her and felt protected in those arms. Her lips still retained the heat of his kiss. 4 months passed before Tom realized that he was in love with Katie. She realized this much earlier. A year later, Tom and Katie got married. It was a small ceremony among close friends and relatives. They moved into Tom's house on Kensington Street and began their life together. The CD player stopped playing. Katie didn't seem to notice she was too immersed in pleasant memories. She removed the disc and carefully placed it in the case along with the card. After skipping the next two white boxes, she reached for the gold one. The gold and silver boxes were special to her. They held her fondest memories. Opening the golden box, she took out a CD and a card. She received this box on the morning of her wedding day. Katie and her bridesmaids were getting ready for the big day when the doorbell rang. One of the friends opened it. It was a FedEx courier delivering a gold box. A friend brought it to Katie. Everyone started looking for someone with a portable CD player and finally found a guest with such a device. Everyone gathered around as Katie opened the box and inserted the disc into the player. She started reading the card and then pressed play. An old tune played by the Times, "So Much in Love." Katie then read the lines on the card. "When we go to the altar together, we will vow to be together until the end of days. So much love between us. We can't wait to say yes. So in love, so much in love." Tears welled up in Katie's eyes, but Lisa immediately screamed, "Just don't cry, you'll ruin your makeup." She waved her hands in front of Katie's face, trying to cool her emotions. "With such a card and a song," one of the girlfriends jokes, "if you can't make it to the altar, I don't mind replacing you." Katie snorted. "Don't even think about it. I'll get there soon. I don't know why I even chose you as my bridesmaid." Everyone laughed and the makeup crisis was averted. When Katie arrived at the church, Just before the wedding march began, she looked out the door and saw Tom at the altar, talking about something with his best man. He looked amazing in a tuxedo. Katie was filled with pride for her man and wondered how she got so lucky. At that moment, she made a promise to herself to make him the happiest person in the world. Katie smiled, remembering how she felt before the wedding. But the smile immediately disappeared when she realized how much she had let Tom down. She didn't keep her promise. Katie shook her head slowly, wondering how she could have hurt him like that. A memory that should have been wonderful no longer brought joy. She quickly slipped the card and disc back into the golden box and returned it to its place among the other boxes. Katie looked further, past two white boxes, and stopped at the first silver one. She opened it and read the writing inside. As she inserted the disc into the player, she heard the soft voice of Frank Sinatra filling the room. She remembered Tom returning from work on their first wedding anniversary. Katie spent the whole day preparing. First, she visited the salon, got her hair done and her nails done, and also Brazilian depilation. Tom had constantly hinted that he liked the sleek look, and this surprise was her gift to him. When she heard him enter the house and call her, she went down the stairs, putting on her earrings. When she reached the middle of the stairs, she saw him frozen in place, his mouth open. He was so fascinated by her appearance that he even dropped the silver box. The card and disc fell to the floor. Katie was wearing black 4-inch stilettos, come and seduce me shoes. His gaze traveled up her legs, stopping at mid-thigh where the hem of her little black dress began. Then he moved higher, to her waist, and then to her chest. The neckline of the dress generously exposed her curves. Thin straps crossed her shoulders and Katie's hair was elegantly pulled up. Her brown eyes sparkled with pleasure at her husband's reaction. Tom finally woke up, bent down to collect the box, and then looked up, standing in front of it. In one hand, he held a silver box, in the other, a case with jewelry. They sat down on the sofa, and he handed her the case. "Happy anniversary, my love." Opening it, Katie screamed with delight. Inside was a diamond choker necklace. She rushed to hug her husband, clinging to him so that he could feel another surprise: the absence of a bra. "Put it on me," she asked. As Tom fastened the necklace, she walked over to the mirror, turned right, then left, admiring the reflection. It was the most beautiful gift she had ever received. She turned around and saw Tom looking at her with genuine joy. There is nothing more important to him than seeing her happy. Tom opened the box, took out the disc, and inserted it into the player. "May I invite you to dance, beautiful lady?" He smiled. "This is the most appropriate gift I have ever given you. You are absolutely gorgeous today." A Frank Sinatra song started playing. "The Way You Look Tonight," just like now in Katie's bedroom. "When I will be especially bad. When the world seems cold. I will glow thinking of you. And about how wonderful you look today." They danced silently, clinging to each other, immersed in the radiance of love. When the music died down, Tom whispered, "Should we skip dinner and go straight to the bedroom?" Katie smiled flirtatiously. "No way, honey. I've spent so much time and your money getting ready, so we're going to a restaurant." Tom tried to persuade again. "Darling, I only need you, and to hell with dinner." "We can eat later," Katie replied. "Didn't you tell me once that it's better to wait and let the anticipation build?" "Then everything will be even better." Katie grinned. Tom muttered, "No, I'm not always right about this expectation." Katie laughed. "No, then you were right, and waiting until the exit will be correct today." Tom laughed too. He knew this was an argument he couldn't win, and arguing with his beautiful and sexy wife today was the last thing he wanted. Tom had earlier told Katie his plans for the evening, and she made sure they did everything he had in mind. First, there was a delicious dinner at an expensive Japanese steakhouse. After dinner, they went to a local comedy club and watched two comedians perform. Then they went to a small piano bar where they danced, drank a couple of cocktails, and talked for a long time about intimate topics. On the way home, they couldn't keep their hands off each other. They both realized that this idea of waiting really worked. Katie smiled again, remembering that evening. They spent almost the entire night indulging in tender, affectionate love. It was her favorite night of her entire marriage to Tom. Perfect evening. Katie stood up and walked over to her jewelry box. She opened it and took out a diamond necklace. It meant so much to her that evening. She brought the necklace to her lips and a tear rolled down her cheek. She returned the necklace to the box, then walked over to the bed and put the card and CD back into place among the row of boxes. She skipped the next white box and took the second silver one. I inserted the disc into the player, and the velvety voice of Nat King Cole began to sing Unforgettable. She remembered the night of their second anniversary. It was Saturday, and Tom had gone out on some business. Although Katie knew he had another social outing planned, she had her own plans. She was waiting for him in the living room, wearing a translucent blue peignoir. She was wearing nothing underneath. When the front door opened, a thought flashed through her head. I hope Tom doesn't bring a friend with him, otherwise I'm standing here practically naked in the living room. But there was nothing to worry about. Tom didn't even think about bringing friends home that evening. It got exactly the effect Katie was hoping for. When he saw his wife, he froze, taking in the sight. His sexy wife, essentially naked, standing right on the carpet in the living room. Katie noticed that Tom was holding two boxes, one in each hand, just like last year. Approaching her, he placed the boxes on the table. As he reached for his wife, Katie placed her hands on his chest and gently pushed him away. He looked at her questioningly. "First the boxes, honey, and then the sweets," Katie said with a smile. Tom laughed, took the boxes, and handed them to his wife. She opened the first one to reveal a diamond bracelet and earrings that perfectly complemented the necklace she had given her a year ago. "Darling, be so kind as to put them on me," Katie said playfully. It was difficult for Tom to concentrate, threading the earrings through the tiny holes in his earlobes, when in front of him were his wife's breasts pressed against the fabric of the peignoir in all their glory. When he finally succeeded, his hand slid up to lightly squeeze one of them. Katie first moaned, and then playfully spanked her husband. "You still have one more box for me." Tom handed her the silver box. She opened it and took out a CD. Without even reading the card, she immediately gave the disc to her husband so that he could put it in the player. As soon as the magical words of Cole's song began to play, she pulled Tom towards her and gave him a hot kiss. They were so carried away by each other that they hardly heard the music. They made love right in front of the fireplace. 2 hours later, hungry, they ordered pizza. Their anniversary dinner was simple: pizza and wine. This is even better than last year. "The perfect meal after a grueling workout," Tom said, smiling. "Yes," said Katie. "Maybe we can repeat the training? What do you think?" They repeated this workout and pizza and wine dinner many more times in the following months. It wasn't until the next morning that Katie read the card that came with the CD. On it, in large block letters, was written the text that Tom wanted her to remember. "Unforgettable in every way. And forevermore, that's how you'll stay. That's why, darling, it's incredible. That's someone so unforgettable. I think that I am unforgettable too." Katie thought about that night. She remembered the pale blue peignoir. He got lost during a move and was never found again. She wished she had him now. If she had it, he could bring back even more special memories of that night. She put the card and disc away. She now walked to the last white box before moving on to the blue ones. To those terrible blue boxes. The blue boxes full of pain could wait. She will open the last of the white boxes first. This box was the last one before the loss of virginity in marriage. At least for Tom, but not for Katie. She was dating another man. And not just with someone, but with the man of your dreams, your first lover. Yes, John is back. 5 months have passed since that night of their second wedding anniversary. That night they shared their love again. Unknown to Tom, his worst nightmare has become a reality. The man from Katie's fantasies is back. He had been in the city for 2 months already. Dr. Williams was opening his practice and needed insurance. He came into the office and was talking to another employee when Katie walked by. John noticed her first and called out, "Katie, is that you?" Katie turned to see who was calling her, and her heart began to beat faster. All the old feelings came flooding back with renewed vigor. It was as if he had never left. "John, when did you return?" she exclaimed. John rose from his chair and hugged her tightly. She answered him the same. "You haven't changed at all since school." "Still the same beauty," he said. "But you have changed. You've become even more beautiful, if that's even possible," she replied flirtatiously. He smiled and suggested, "Why don't we have lunch together and reminisce about old times?" Katie happily agreed. "With pleasure. Let me just grab my purse." They left hand in hand. She didn't notice the disapproving looks from most of the women in the office. Everyone saw how she literally melted next to this man. All thoughts about my husband disappeared. Oh, if only Katie could see herself from the outside. The rest of the women saw this as a problem. They had all known Tom for 3 years, and many liked him. Some even envied Katie, dreaming of such a man. They decided to see what would happen next. One of these women, Grace, was paying particular attention to the situation. If Katie makes a mistake, Grace won't regret taking her place in Tom's life. She was simply biding her time. Katie eagerly went to lunch with John. She told herself it was just a meeting with an old friend, but deep down she knew that if John showed interest in her, she would not resist. She will betray her marriage and her husband without a second thought. The fantasy of John that she had cherished for so many years was too sweet to give up. She didn't admit it to herself, but she knew. When Katie returned to the office after lunch, her friend Lisa met her and immediately pulled her into the ladies' room, locking the door. "Do you even understand what you're doing? You are a married woman," Lisa asked directly. Katie hesitated. "It was just lunch with an old school friend, nothing more." But Lisa didn't look convinced. "The gossip started as soon as you left. And believe me, you wouldn't like them. Nobody believes that it was just lunch." Katie tried to convince her. "This is true. There was nothing else." Lisa calmed down a little. She was Katie's best friend and had been through many difficult times with her, especially after her former lover left her. Tom was the first man to treat Katie like a queen, and Lisa knew he would never hurt her. "If you're smart," she warned, "you won't allow yourself any feelings for this guy." "What's his name, by the way?" Katie answered quietly. "John Williams." Lisa flushed. "The same John Williams who cheated on you and then just disappeared. Was he the one you went to lunch with? You yourself said that if you ever see him again, you will slap him in the face and not hug and kiss him." "I didn't kiss him," Katie snapped. Lisa narrowed her eyes. "You're lying. I saw from the window how you kissed him. You've seen him once, and you're already lying to me?" Katie sank heavily into the soft chair in the ladies' room. "Sorry for lying. I couldn't resist. He awakened in me the desire that has always been there." Lisa shook her head. "You'll ruin your marriage if you don't stop. I am your friend and will support you in anything. But not this." Katie sighed. I know, you're right. I promise I won't do anything that will jeopardize my marriage." Lisa calmed down a little, but still doubted that Katie would keep her promise. She knew that her friend was too weak in front of the image of the knight John Williams. But she only said, "Okay, let's go to work." At first, everything was limited to dinners and pleasant conversations. Then there were shared drinks after work if Tom was late. After a few weeks, the after-work drinks turned into steamy kisses. Then touching and stroking were added. They again behaved like teenagers who were crazy about each other. Katie hasn't slept with John yet, but she's already pleasured him in the back seat of his car. She herself didn't know whether it would have come to sex or not if it weren't for Tom's business trip to Pittsburgh. This was not just a study trip, but an opportunity to make useful contacts. Tom invited Katie to go with him, but she refused, citing work. He was upset, but understood. But was this the real reason? Or did she just want to spend time with John? Katie didn't admit it to herself, but she knew the truth. In fact, she took a vacation for those same 5 days. The betrayal was complete. All that was left was to sleep. Once the computer confirmed that Tom's flight had left the airport, Katie called John and invited him to her house on Kensington Street to complete the betrayal of her marriage. John actually spent 6 nights and 5 days in Tom's bed, and most of this time was also spent in the body of his wife. The sex turned out to be exactly how Katie had imagined it. John became a skilled lover. Being a serial womanizer, he turned into a real predator. Nights filled with wine, ecstasy, and other illicit substances clouded Katie's mind. By Friday evening, the seduction and conquest of Katie was complete. In fact, Katie's betrayal began the day John walked into the insurance agency's office. It only took him 5 days to win her heart, while it took Tom months. Of course, John's conquest came with a lot of sex and illicit substances, which Tom did not have. By Saturday morning, Katie was already planning to leave Tom and be with John. John was due to close on a new home in 2 weeks. While he was living in a small hotel room, waiting for the deal to be completed. Until this moment, Katie had to live with Tom. John left at 9 a.m. on Saturday. An hour later, there was a knock on the door. Katie opened it and saw a courier from a local flower shop with a huge bouquet. The bouquet also came with a white box. Tom must have ordered this a week in advance. Katie gave the courier a tip and sent him on his way. She opened the box and took out the card and CD inside. Putting the disc into the player, she was surprised to hear a country tune. This wasn't the first time Tom had sent her country songs in boxes. However, while listening to this one, she realized that the song was perfect. It was 6 Days on the Road, which began with the lines, "Well, I pulled out of Pittsburgh, rolling down the eastern seaboard," and it ended with the words, "Well, my rig's a little old, but that don't mean she's slow. My hometown's coming in sight. If you think I'm happy, you're right. 6 days on the road. And I'm gonna make it home tonight." Katie wondered how the hell he found that disc. She knew he would be happy to be home with her again. She knew he would want sex right away. Katie hoped she could cope without giving herself away. She hoped she could keep the secret for 2 weeks. The limousine arrived at the house at 4 p.m. 6 hours after she received the flowers. Tom got out, paid, and tipped the driver, then put the suitcases on the porch. He was looking forward to meeting his wife. What surprise did she have in store for him? Will she be wearing a new negligee, some revealing clothes, or maybe no clothes at all? The images of his wife that appeared in his head made his heart beat faster. The waiting took its toll. He opened the door and was surprised to see Katie sitting on the living room couch. She was wearing a t-shirt and old shorts. She stood up and walked over to him to kiss and hug him. Tom was amazed she was wearing a bra and panties. This is clearly not the reception he expected. He tried to hint to his wife that they should go into the bedroom and relieve tension after 6 days of separation. "I'm tired now, maybe in the evening, okay?" Katie suggested. "Maybe in the evening? What the hell is going on? Who is this woman, and what did she do to my wife?" Hanging, he went out onto the porch to get his suitcases. Not knowing what to do, he put all the dirty clothes in the laundry basket, put away the toiletries, and took the suitcases to the attic. When he finished, he walked into the kitchen where Katie was preparing dinner. Approaching her from behind, he hugged her waist and began to gently kiss her neck. She pushed him away. "Not now. Can't you see what I'm cooking? Just leave me alone." Now, not only disappointed, but also rejected, Tom left the kitchen and sat down in the living room. He thought about the changes in his wife and could not find an explanation for them. This was not the same woman he left last Sunday. Something had happened during his trip, but she clearly didn't want to talk about it. Anxiety hung in the air. It was still unclear how all this would turn out. Katie was worried. She knew she wasn't doing a good job of hiding the truth. A feeling of guilt gnawed at her. She couldn't look him in the eye, let alone hug him or kiss him. She knew she was doing everything wrong. When she looked into the living room and saw her husband looking out the window, she realized that she had failed. She could see from his posture that he suspected something, but she had no idea what to do next. After dinner, he literally dragged her into the bedroom. They did not make tender love as usual after his return. They just had sex. It wasn't affectionate and sensual like he always was. It was tough and only once. Then he leaned back and just looked at her. She turned away and started crying. Tom got up, took a shower, got dressed, and left the house. He didn't return until Sunday evening. When he returned, Katie asked, "Where did you spend the night?" "I had to sort out the documents. I spent the night in the workshop," he answered irritably. "I was worried. Why didn't you call?" "Don't you have a phone? Fingers not working?" he snapped. They didn't say another word to each other that night. Katie put the CD away. She thought maybe it should have been put in a blue box, too. The return home was terrible. What else could she expect? She cheated on her husband and felt guilty as hell. Even worse, she was planning to leave him for another man, and now Tom suspected something. Katie took the first of the blue boxes. She hesitated before opening it. It was at this moment that the pain began. She opened the box and took out the CD. There was no postcard. Her betrayal destroyed the tradition of boxes. She inserted the disc into the player, and the song began to play. Katie remembered receiving this box. She came to work on Monday with an unusual bouquet of lavender. Katie later learned that lavender is the flower of mistrust. If any of the girls knew about this, they didn't say anything. As usual, the girls gathered around to listen to the song Tom had sent her. But this time, Katie wasn't sure she wanted them to hear her. She didn't know what would be on the CD. The girls continued to persuade her to put on the disc, as she always did when she received a box. Finally, she could no longer resist and turned on the player. They all listened in silence until Bob Sedger's voice spoke. "I know it's late. I know you're tired. I know your plans don't include me. All my hopes are fading. But we have everything. Let's keep it. Let's find a way. Why don't you stay?" At first the girls were silent, but soon they began to look at Katie with judgment. They all saw her with John and were not surprised that Tom understood everything. One of the older women named Rose asked, "Katie, what have you done?" Katie decided that everything had already been decided. In 2 weeks, she was going to leave Tom and everyone would know about it. Why hide? She gave them a cheeky look and said, "I'm leaving Tom in 2 weeks. I'm moving in with John, the man I'm dating. Is this what you wanted to hear?" Rose replied, "No, this is not what I wanted to hear, but this is exactly what I expected. You may not realize it now, but I think you're making a huge mistake. Your husband is crazy about you, and he is one of the best men I know. I doubt your new man will last long. You can still stop everything before it's too late. Maybe it's already too late. You heard the song, he already suspects something," Katie said. "If he leaves, it will be your loss and someone else's lucky day." Rose shook her head and left. The rest of the girls also went their separate ways. Only Grace and her friend Lisa remained. Grace asked, "Are you really going to leave Tom?" "Yes," Katie answered sharply. Grace simply nodded, turned around, and left. Lisa looked at Katie with hatred. "You didn't listen to my advice. Don't come to me and cry when everything goes to hell. I'm very disappointed in you. I kept wondering why you don't call me, why you don't answer my calls." Lisa turned on her heel and left. Katie knew she was angry, but she was sure Lisa would calm down when she saw how good her relationship was with John. Katie was confident she was making the right choice. Katie pulled the disc out of the player and put it away. She looked at the CD and box again and wondered why she didn't do what Lisa suggested. That evening, she went home and demanded an explanation from Tom about the song. "Why did you send this? I'm your wife," she shouted. "Is it true?" he answered angrily. "And I thought that you had someone else. On Saturday, you didn't act like a wife at all. The card and song simply convey my thoughts." "You're wrong, Tom. You're simply wrong," she spat. But she knew he was right. He hit the nail on the head. Why didn't she just confess? She had a chance to tell him the truth, but she didn't take it. Then, deep down in her soul, she simply did not want to talk. She didn't want this to become a reality. The second time, she brushed away a tear and put the box away. Her fingers ran over the tops of the boxes and stopped at the second blue box. She remembered how she received it. It was the day after she received the Bob Sedger song. She arrived at the house on Kensington Street and saw a box lying on the porch right next to the door. As soon as she noticed her, she immediately looked around to see if Tom was watching. But there was no one around. Katie quickly grabbed the box and carried it into the house. She decided it would be best to open it before John returned. There was a note inside, as usual. She unfolded the folded sheet of paper and began to read. These were not song lyrics. It was a short letter. My love, I know you so well, perhaps even better than you know yourself. You were my precious stone, my diamond. I knew every edge, every cut, every corner. At least that's what I thought. I looked into the very depths of this diamond, as if into your heart, into your soul. I didn't see this imperfection, but now I see. The song on the CD says what my mind is thinking, while my heart screams that this can't be true. If I'm wrong, please call me. I will get down on my knees to ask, no, beg for forgiveness. If you don't, I'll understand. When I fell in love with you, I didn't notice this flaw. Love is blind, and blind eyes do not see. I'm waiting for your answer, my love. What will it be like? Katie's lips trembled, and she held back a tear. She put the disc in the player, and Ronnie Millsap's voice began to speak. I don't see love in her eyes anymore. I'm starting to understand. I feel the presence of another man. She looks out the window. Her thoughts are far away. She loves him in her mind. While he's lying in my bed, there's a stranger in my house. There's someone here who wants to take her from me. Of course, Katie didn't call. Once again, Tom and the song were right. Katie was amazed at how clearly he saw the situation. Why couldn't Tom understand that she didn't want to hurt him? She simply loved another man. Maybe she should have told him the truth right away. Katie realized that she had never told him anything. Why? It was a question she didn't want to answer, even to herself. Could doubts be creeping into her head? No, it's impossible. Katie shook the thought away. There will be no call. The wife who betrayed her husband could not tell him that his suspicions were correct. Katie picked up the third blue box. In a way, it was the scariest box. Tom increasingly spent the night in the office. He would come home one night and not the next. Because of Tom's unpredictability, Katie and John could not see each other on weekdays. They decided to take a chance and meet on Friday, hoping that Tom would not return home. Katie drove past the auto repair shop next to her work. The irony was that this was where Tom spent his nights when he wasn't coming home. At 7 in the evening, she saw his car at the workshop. Calculating that he would not come home again, Katie called John and said that the way was clear. They could meet at her house. But Katie didn't know that Tom was going to return. Tom was looking for the perfect song to put on disc. He also wrote the card by hand. He wanted to talk to Katie and try to save their marriage. Tom suspected that she was dating someone else because she never called as he asked if he was wrong. But he had no evidence, only guesses. He was going to catch her off guard and talk. At 8:30 p.m., Tom left the workshop. Half an hour later, he was already driving up to his house. But turning onto his street, he saw an unfamiliar car parked near his house. His heart began to beat faster. Something was wrong. Tom stopped 5 houses away from him and parked. In his hands, he had a bouquet of flowers and a white box. Approaching the door, he tried the handle. It was locked. He quietly inserted the key, turned it, and the door opened. He carefully stepped inside. The house was quiet. Tom walked slowly until he reached the stairs. He remembered Katie walking down those steps in a little black dress on their first anniversary a year ago. She was beautiful. This thought made him smile. But then he heard voices. And then the movement of the bed. The smile disappeared. His face froze, and a coldness reigned in his soul. Tom walked up the stairs, carefully passing the 5th step, which always creaked. He began to sweat as he approached the bedroom. He opened the door slightly and saw what he feared most. On their marital bed, his wife made love to another man. They were in a missionary position, and Tom could see him thrusting in and out of Katie. He recognized him immediately. It was John Williams, the same person whose photographs were in her school yearbook, the one she dated in high school, the one who was her first love, the one who took her virginity. Tom's eyes filled with tears. Knowing turned out to be much more painful than he thought. He should have burst into the room and smashed the bastard to pieces. But what would this lead to? He would go to jail and Katie would testify against him. No, he'll just leave. Let everything take its course. Tom turned around and went downstairs. Now he didn't even bother avoiding the fifth step. It didn't matter. They were too distracted to hear. He left the flowers on the kitchen table, opened the box, and broke the CD in half, leaving it next to the flowers. He took the card with him. Then he left the house and slammed the door. Katie remembered what happened next. She whispered, "Did you hear that?" John replied irritably, "I didn't hear anything." He wanted to continue. "No, I definitely heard something." She threw him off, put on her robe, and went downstairs. She saw flowers and a broken CD, and her heart sank. White box. She knew what that meant. Tom wanted her back, but now he knew everything. She wasn't sure if he saw them or just heard them, but now it didn't matter anymore. She felt terrible. She didn't want to hurt Tom that much. Yes, she knew she would break his heart, but not this way. And yet, why did she care? She was leaving. She loved John. Tom shouldn't have mattered to her. But why did she feel so strange then? John went downstairs and saw flowers. He snorted. So this rag came with flowers and a disc. What a pity. Katie didn't think it was pathetic, but there was no point in arguing with John. Tom didn't return to the house for a whole week. John never left. In fact, he moved in with her. Katie woke up from her memories. She looked at the boxes in front of her, and suddenly I realized she would like to return that broken disc in the white box. If she had kept it then, maybe she wouldn't have these other blue boxes, and even the black and red ones. She turned on the CD. The song sounded, Roy Orbison, Running Scared. She opened the card and read the lines printed inside. I ran full of fear, afraid of losing you. And suddenly he stood in front of you, so confident, with his head held high. My heart was breaking. Who will you choose? You turned and left with me. Roy Orbison sang it, but the card said something else. The last line on the card read, Will you go with him or stay with me? Katie remembered the day she received this box. It was Monday morning, and it was delivered by FedEx. No flowers, no gifts, just a blue box. The girls, now more curious than ever, surrounded Katie in her booth again, coaxing her to turn on the CD. But this time Katie refused. Now she knew that the blue box was a bad sign. Obviously, the girls understood this too, but still begged her to turn on the disc. Katie remained adamant. It wasn't until after work, when she got into her Toyota, the same one Tom had fixed on their first night, that she began to open the box. But then there was a knock on the window. It was her friend Lisa and an elderly woman, Rose. "Do you mind if we listen to the CD that Tom sent?" asked Lisa. "We'll just sit in the car with you and listen. No comments, just support you if you need it." Katie nodded. "I really need friends who will listen to this with me. Do you promise not to judge me?" The girls nodded silently, and Katie let them into the car. Lisa sat next to him, and Rose sat in the back seat. Katie opened the box, hesitated a moment, then inserted the disc into the player and unfolded the card. Everyone sat in silence while the song played. Katie read the text, then passed the card to her friends. Lisa, having finished reading, began to cry. She understood that Tom put his whole soul into this. He opened up to Katie and admitted his fear of losing her. At the end, he wrote that he would return home on Saturday morning, and by then she needed to make a decision. He ended with the words, "I hope you choose me." Rose read the card and asked, "Katie, what are you going to do?" "I'm leaving with John on Saturday morning," Katie answered calmly. Rose just nodded and said, "I would like to be loved so much that they ask me to come back, even if they are sure that I cheated." Katie looked at her and asked, "Rose, but you've been married and divorced twice, right?" "Yes, you are right," Rose admitted sadly. "But if I could go back, I would never cheat on Chet, my first husband. He was the love of my life, but I realized it too late. I haven't been this happy since then." Maybe, but I'm sure John is the one I'm meant to be with. Lisa thanked Katie for sharing the contents of the box with them. They swore not to tell anyone about this. Katie also thanked them for keeping her secret. At home, Katie discussed the situation with John. Just leave and leave the house empty, he suggested. He will understand that he is lost and will accept it. This is the best you can do. But Katie shook her head. I can't do this. He was always honest with me, always respected me. I have to tell him this to his face. John shrugged. If you think so, do as you please. But by Saturday, everything should be decided. At 9:45 am on Saturday morning, Katie was sitting at the kitchen table. The last two suitcases stood by the door. She moved the rest of her things to John's new apartment the day before. Exactly at 10 am Tom entered the house. The first thing he saw was the suitcases. At the same moment, Katie noticed how his face changed. Just now, there was still a glimmer of hope in his eyes, but now it was replaced by pain. Without saying a word, Tom walked to the refrigerator, took out a beer, opened it, and threw the cap into the sink. Then he sat down opposite Katie and took a long sip. So you've already answered the question, he finally said. What question? Katie was surprised. Tom took another sip and replied, You're leaving with him, not staying with me. Oh, was all she could say. Do you love him? Yes. So there's no point in fighting for you anymore. No, I'm sorry, Tom. Tom placed the bottle on the table with such a thud that Katie flinched. Without looking at her, he said quietly but sharply, Then get your damn ass out of my house. Katie was startled by his words. He had never spoken to her like that. Can you help me carry out my suitcases? She asked, still hoping he wasn't that angry. Tom took another sip, finished the bottle, and forcefully placed it on the table. It's your choice. Carry your damn suitcases yourself. Katie swallowed, picked up one suitcase, then the other, and carried them out onto the porch. She then took out her phone and texted John to come pick her up. Before leaving, she took one last look at the house where they had lived together for 3 years. They were happy. She heard a sound from the kitchen and went to the window. There, sitting at the table, Tom cried. Quietly, silently, but his shoulders trembled. She put her hand to the glass, and her wedding ring softly hit the glass. Tom raised his head sharply and looked at her with anger in his eyes. He walked outside, grabbed her left hand, and quickly removed the wedding and engagement rings from her finger. Without saying a word, he returned to the house and threw them on the table. The rings bounced off the tabletop and fell to the floor. Tom didn't even try to pick them up. Katie looked at him through the window. He walked to the window, not taking his eyes off her, and slowly closed the blinds. His eyes didn't let go of her until the blinds were completely closed. Katie had never seen such hatred in anyone's eyes before. For the first time, she was afraid of her husband. She was also afraid for John. John believed that Tom was a weakling and a coward. She knew, or thought she knew to this day, that Tom would never hurt her, but she wasn't so sure about John anymore. She had no illusions. She knew that her soon-to-be ex-husband would not be someone who would be easily defeated in a fight. Finally, John arrived at a cozy house on Kensington Street. As he picked up the bags from the porch, he loudly shouted insults at Tom, who was in the house. As they drove away, Katie was relieved that Tom never left the house to confront John. She hoped they could part ways as friends. This was not meant to be. With that ugly episode behind her, Katie was happy. She was with her old love. Now they will start a new life together. She will do whatever it takes to make John happy. Katie put the disc in the blue box along with the card and put it back in the closet. She thought it was ironic. She told Tom the same thing she had just thought about John. She would do whatever it took to make him happy. She was a complete failure at this. She took the next blue box from the shelf and looked inside. She remembered this box too well. She knew what song was on the disc because there was no card inside. When she took out the CD, she immediately thought of Tom's cousin, Janice, and the day of her bridal shower. Katie was talking to her friends before leaving when Janice approached her. Janice looked Katie straight in the eye and asked, "Do you really love my cousin?" Katie assured her. Yes, I love him very much. I hope you mean it sincerely, Janice warned. I don't want Tom to get hurt again. Katie asked why she was so worried. Janice spoke briefly about Tom's childhood. Tom's mother died of stomach cancer when he was 7 years old. His father became a heavy drinker and died of cirrhosis of the liver when Tom was 12. My family took him in. My mother is his aunt, his mother's sister. For some reason, my father did not want to take responsibility for Tom, but my mother insisted that only the family would raise her sister's son. As a result, Tom always felt unwanted by his father, a burden on the family. At school, he had problems with attaching himself to girls and was always absent from extracurricular activities. He was literally a lone wolf with no friends. The only thing that saved him was that he was a very strong guy. He got into fights at the slightest provocation and almost always emerged victorious. This did not bring him friends, but no one dared to touch him. For me, it was even beneficial because he was like an older brother to me. As soon as his name was mentioned, any problems with hooligans immediately ended. Did you see all the scars on his body? Janice asked. Katie was interested. Tom never said where he got his scars. Yes, I saw it, she answered. He said it was from a bullet, shrapnel, and a knife wound on the left side of the body. Janice continued. All the scars are related to his military service, except for the knife one. He got this one while defending me in a bar from two drunk bikers. Katie had never heard of it and wanted to know more, and Janice was only too happy to tell. Tom was on vacation after his first deployment to Iraq. I went to the Dewdrop Inn, one of the local bars that was frequented by a tough crowd bikers and truckers. Why Angie wanted to go there is still a mystery to me. Tom was sitting there with two army buddies who were also on leave. I didn't notice him right away. Angie and I were sitting at a table when two dubious characters approached us and asked us to dance. One was large, with short hair and wearing a black biker jacket. The second one is smaller, with dirty dark hair. I still remember them like it was yesterday. We refused, but they didn't take no for an answer. The guy with dirty hair got angry and started insulting us, calling us girls of easy virtue and bullies, and the bigger one grabbed me by the arm and tried to pull me out from behind the table. Tom appeared as if out of nowhere and pushed him away from me. He tried to hit Tom, but missed, and Tom immediately beat him with his fists until he fell. When Tom turned to the second one, I saw how the knife ripped open his lower abdomen, leaving a deep cut. To my amazement, he did not react at all. He simply hit the attacker in the knee. I heard bones breaking, and he collapsed. 3 blows to the groin ended the fight. That's why Tom is my favorite cousin, Katie. Who knows what would have happened if he hadn't been there? I take great care of him, and I don't want anything bad to happen to him. If you hurt him, you'll have to deal with me. Katie was surprised to learn about her future husband's past. He was always kind and gentle with her. But now she felt safe knowing that he was the one who could protect her if necessary. She assured Janice again. After I found out how he protected you, I think I love him even more. I promise I will never hurt him. Smiling bitterly, Katie thought that this was yet another promise she had failed to keep. She remembered the day this box arrived at her office. The package arrived again by FedEx courier on the Monday after that Saturday scene, but this time without flowers. Apparently, he decided that she no longer deserves flowers. She refused to play the CD again in front of the girls, but played it for Lisa and Rose in her car after work. They both wanted to know what the song meant because there was no card in the box. And then Katie told them about Tom's childhood, about the death of his parents, and that he found love and acceptance only with her. Now, years later, she realized that she had not realized the meaning of the song when she first heard it. Then it seemed to her that she simply meant that he loved her more than she loved him. She didn't shed a tear the first time she played the song in the car. Lisa and Rose didn't say a word to console her that day. They just got out of the car. When she put the disc into the player, the Bee Gees tune started playing To Love Somebody. There's a light, a certain kind of light, that never shone on me. In my brain, I see your face again. I'm a man, can't you see what I am? I live and breathe for you. But what good does it do? If I ain't got you, baby. You don't know what it's like to love somebody the way I love you. Tears flowed down Katie's cheeks and into her mouth. She felt the bitter taste of tears on her tongue. Now she knew what the song was about. She was that light. Tom wanted her love to illuminate him in a way that no one had ever illuminated his life before. Tom thought that Katie was the right person, but she took away this light from him, perhaps the only thing he needed more than anything else. Katie was sorry. If she knew then what she knows now, she would still be married to Tom. She put the box back into the case and took out the last white box. The last white box he ever gave her. The last white box before the black one. She remembered too well the day she received it. It was Friday, a week after she received the Bee Gees CD. Katie, Lisa, and Rose were leaving the office building where they all worked. As they walked towards the parking lot, someone shouted, "Katie, wait!" They turned around and saw Tom running down the street. He was dressed as usual, tight-fitting jeans, a light blue short-sleeved chambray shirt tucked in, and work boots. Katie admitted to herself that he looked good. Rose whispered, "If he were mine, I wouldn't let him go." Katie gave her an annoyed look as Tom came closer. They all noticed that he had a white box in his left hand. "Hello," he said. Katie saw his gaze slowly move from her knees until their eyes met. They lingered on each other for a second, but then Tom reluctantly looked away and turned to Rose and Lisa. He nodded briefly at them in greeting. They responded in kind. Then he looked at Katie again. "You look good." "Thank you," she replied. There was an awkward silence. Finally, Tom spoke. "Katie, I need to talk to you. Just a few minutes, okay?" "I don't know, Tom. I need to go home. John is waiting for me." "I know," he said. "It will only take 5 minutes. Do you really have time for an old friend for 5 minutes?" When he referred to himself as an old friend rather than an ex-lover or jilted husband, Katie realized he didn't want to fight and decided to listen to him. Tom turned to Lisa and Rose. "I want to talk to Katie alone. I hope you don't mind." He started to walk with Katie to her car, but Rose and Lisa followed them. They both loved Tom, but at this stage they could not be sure whether he was capable of aggression. After a few steps, Tom noticed that they were following them and smiled. "Okay, apparently I'll have to talk in front of you." He turned to Katie. "Please don't interrupt. I need to say everything at once. If you interfere, I won't be able to continue." "Fine." Katie nodded. Tom began. "I know that I do not have a higher education. I don't express myself well, and it's my fault. I've never been good at talking openly about my feelings. Perhaps I too rarely said that I love you and did not show how much I care about you. I tried to convey my feelings through songs, through their words, but obviously it didn't work out. I loved you more than you will ever know. I was so happy with you that I probably didn't notice your unhappiness. I wish I had seen it and done nothing." He handed her the box. "This is my last gift for you. It is important both for me and for you. If the song doesn't mean anything to you, I won't bother you anymore. I won't come to your work. I won't show up at your house. If we meet by chance on the street, it will be pure coincidence. If your car breaks down, you can bring it to my workshop." He smiled faintly. "True, this time I will take money from you." Katie remembered how they met and smiled too. "That's probably all I wanted to say." He was about to leave, but turned again. "There is something else. I want to thank you. These 3 years were the best of my life. I will always remember them and think of you fondly." Finally, Tom looked at Lisa and Rose. "Girls, today you showed me what real courage and devotion are. I'm glad Katie has friends like her. It's just a pity that you thought so badly of me. Did you really think that I could hurt her?" His voice wavered at the word pain, and he fell silent for a moment. Then he continued, "That I could hurt her." He sighed. "Since we most likely won't see each other again, this is truly goodbye. May you both find what you are looking for in life, and when you find it, may it stay with you forever." His voice wavered again on the word forever, but he managed to finish. By this point, Rose was openly crying and hugged Tom tightly. When she did this, Tom whispered in her ear, "If someone tries to offend or disturb Katie, will you let me know?" When they released their embrace, Rose, still crying and smiling at the same time, nodded, indicating that she would tell. Tom then hugged Lisa goodbye and asked her the same question. She answered quietly, "I'll let you know." Tom turned around and left without looking back. He knew he couldn't do it. The girls would see tears in his eyes. They watched in silence as Katie's husband left. Rose turned to her friend and said, "If you let him go after this, then John must really be worth it." Lisa just shook her head. In the short time that she had known John, he had seemed like a complete jerk to her. Lisa tried, but could not see in him what Katie saw. She believed that Katie was making a mistake, and once even told her about it. Then Katie became so angry that their friendship was in jeopardy. After this, Lisa chose not to speak out. Once again, three friends got into Katie's car to listen to the new disc. As before, there was no postcard or note attached to it. Katie picked up the disc and paused before inserting it into the player. She looked at Rose, then at Lisa, and asked, "Should I listen to him?" Lisa shrugged. "Do as you wish. I'm not going to interfere." But Rose spoke up. "After he bears his soul to you, you simply have to listen to the song. You owe him at least this." Katie thought about it, but curiosity got the better of her, and she inserted the disc into the player. Soft melodies of a song sounded from the speakers of "This Boy" by the Beatles. Tom thought this song perfectly described his feelings. Someone took Katie from him. John wanted her, no doubt, but he didn't love her the way Tom loved her. Despite all the pain he caused Katie, Tom would still be willing to take her back. He wanted her to know this. Even being betrayed, he continued to love her and was ready to endure any pain just to return the one he loved. Tom was also sure that sooner or later John would hurt Katie. He'd met people like him before. John was a user. He uses Katie for sex and then leaves her when he's had enough. Katie listened to the soulful words of the song and realized that Tom and the Beatles turned out to be prophets. "That boy took my love away. He'll regret it someday. That boy isn't good for you, though he may want you to. This boy wants you back again. This boy wouldn't mind the pain, would always feel the same. If this boy gets you back again." She realized that in the end John actually regretted taking her. He was not good for her and made her cry. But that day, sitting in the car, Katie did not realize or believe the meaning of these words. As before, Tom used songs to express his feelings, but again did not achieve what he wanted. Katie never contacted him. As she returned the disc to its place, it suddenly dawned on her that she had heard these words before. Tom told her them himself. Shame covered her head. She forgot about it. Katie reached out to the box of white boxes that Tom had given her. Her fingers trembled when she reached for the very first one. She closed her eyes as shame filled her heart. Tom told her about his feelings on the day he handed her the first box. Katie remembered that day. She and Lisa were driving to the shopping center. It was Sunday morning. Tom was planning a picnic for Katie this afternoon, and she wanted to buy herself some new clothes. Katie was driving when Lisa suddenly asked, "Well, how is your mechanic doing?" She teased. Katie immediately responded irritably, "He's not just a mechanic, he owns his own business." "You know that." "Calm down, I was just joking. So what's the deal with him?" asked Lisa. "He loves me, I know that for sure," Katie answered. "And where does such confidence come from?" Lisa asked. "I can see it in the way his face lights up with a smile when he sees me. My car has never worked so well. He constantly asks me to bring her for a checkup, although I am sure that she is fine. He just wants to see me, and when I arrive, he already has lunch ready for us. And God forbid, someone pesters me in front of him, I've already dealt with scenes of jealousy twice. He protects me, takes care of me, takes me to different places, treats me like a treasure. He loves me, I just know it. I just haven't said it yet." "Why not? What's holding him back?" asked Lisa. Katie stopped at a traffic light and replied, I think he's waiting for me to make the first move. He is very shy with women. Lisa looked carefully at her friend. And you? Do you love him? Honestly, I'm not sure. I think so, but I'm not sure, Katie replied. Not sure won't work with a guy like Tom. You have to be truly in love before you can say, I love you. So tell the truth. Do you love him? Asked Lisa. Katie was silent for a long time before answering. It's been so long since I felt anything like love. Not since John. Lisa could no longer stand talking about John Williams and now told Katie about it. I don't want to hear any more about John. He betrayed you. He left and never returned. No call, no letter. John may have wanted you, but he didn't love you. If he loved you, he would be there. You have a man who you think loves you, and he is here, next to you. He doesn't say he loves you. Maybe he feels like you don't love him enough, and that's why he doesn't want to commit. If you want to keep him, you better solve everything as soon as possible, otherwise you will lose him, Lisa exclaimed. If you let him go, you'll regret losing Tom much more than losing John Williams, she muttered under her breath. Katie thought about Lisa's words. She thought she loved Tom, but she still couldn't get John out of her head. Still, she didn't want to lose Tom. She knew that she couldn't find anyone better than him, and maybe everything would only get worse. Katie had been planning for today's date for a long time. It was a picnic in River Park, named after the river that runs through it. She wore short denim shorts and a red and white plaid shirt tied under her breasts so her waist was visible. Since this was Florida, flip-flops were appropriate for the occasion. They had a wonderful day in the park. Tom brought delicious food, 2 bottles of wine, and 1 blanket for 2. After a pleasant day, the couple returned to Katie's apartment. Katie, I'm sorry, honey, but I need to leave early today, Tom said. Why so soon? Katie whined. We just arrived. We can drink some more wine, sit and talk. What do you say? I can't today, Tom answered dissatisfied. I have a meeting with an Avis representative for road assistance in the area. This could be a good source of income for my business, and maybe someday ours too, baby. I need to get ready. Tomorrow there will be too many numbers that I have to remember. Sorry, baby, but I have to go. Katie was upset, but accepted it. I know you need to go, love. Call me tomorrow after the meeting, she asked. He approached her and kissed her. You can count on me, he answered in a hoarse voice. After he left, Katie changed into more comfortable clothes, a t-shirt and sweatpants. She settled down in front of the TV, but was soon suddenly interrupted by the doorbell. Looking through the peephole, she saw Tom and hurriedly opened the door. Have you forgotten something? She exhaled. Yes, and it's you, he replied. He pulled her into his arms again and kissed her. Then he took a step back, and only then did Katie notice a thin white box in his hands. Tom held it in front of him so she could see it. Tomorrow I will meet with an influential representative of a potential partner. I will be able to speak with him on equal terms, express my opinion, and listen to him without any difficulties. But I have another problem with you. Katie, for some reason I can't put my feelings into words the way I'd like, Tom stammered. Then he handed her the box and said, I hope this tells you how I feel about you. Call me anytime. He swallowed, turned around, and left the apartment. Katie was confused by his action. She walked to the window and watched him drive away before opening the box. Inside was a CD and a note. Katie remembered that evening like it was yesterday. She inserted the disc into the player and read the note again, just like before. Randy Travis' song came from the speakers. When you meet that one person, whom I've been looking for so long, the time we spent together, taught me to trust you. This completes the perfect union between a woman and a man. So please don't get me wrong. I don't want to go any further without knowing one answer. Can I trust you with my heart? The only phrase written on the note was, can I trust you with my heart? That evening, Katie thought for a minute and then dialed Tom on her cell phone. When he answered, hello, she said only one word, yes. What? He asked again. You can trust me with your heart, she replied. I'll be right back. Tom shouted excitedly into the phone. Katie was waiting in the hallway when he ran up the stairs. He picked her up and carried her into the apartment, slamming the door with his foot. His voice trembled as he said, "I love you, Katie. I love you as I have never loved anyone on this earth." "I feel the same," she whispered. That night they made love for the first time. In his excitement, Tom did not notice that Katie never said the words, "I love you too." Now that Katie remembered that night, she began to cry. She only now realized that she had loved him all this time. Perhaps she fell in love with him at first sight when she saw him in the auto repair shop. But now it was too late. Katie put the white box away and took out a black one. She thought about the events that led to her receiving the black box. It had been 3 weeks since she last spoke to Tom before her work. As promised, he did not call or appear in her life. On Friday morning, John, getting ready for work, asked, "Would you like to go out to dinner tonight? How about Kelly's downtown?" Katie knew that this was her and Tom's favorite place. "No," Katie answered sharply. "You know that Tom and I often went there. I won't go to a place where I might meet him. If not there, I heard about a new bar and grill that recently opened a few blocks from your work. I can give you a ride to work and then pick you up at 5. I'll wait for you outside the office. What do you say?" John suggested. Katie thought about it and joked. "Sounds like a plan." John was waiting for her and took her to a new place called Easton Ave pub, apparently named after the street it was on. Katie was wary when she saw the look of contempt on the faces of the waitress and bartender as they entered. They sat in a booth near the back wall at the far end of the room. The waitress came over and brought me a menu and water. She soon returned to take drink orders. Just as Katie was placing her order, the door to the pub opened. She looked over and was stunned to see her ex-husband sitting down at the bar. She heard him order his usual gin and tonic. Katie turned sharply to John and asked, "Did you know he would be here?" John grinned and replied, "Of course not." Katie immediately knew he was lying, but didn't know what to do. Before she could say anything else, John announced, "I need to go to the toilet." He got up from his seat and headed towards the bar. He asked the bartender where the restroom was, and he pointed to a large sign that said restrooms. Then John said, "Oh, buddy, I didn't notice you were sitting here." Katie knew that this was also a lie. She herself pointed him to Tom. Tom simply looked at him and turned back to his drink, taking a sip. John came closer, put his hand on the back of Tom's chair, and grinned. "Don't worry so much. She chose the best man, and it wasn't you." Tom glanced at him, then looked at Katie, who was watching the scene. Turning back to John, he calmly said, "Yes, she chose you." John laughed, patted Tom on the back, and added smugly, "That's right, she chose me, not you." After these words, he headed to the toilet. Katie was shocked by what she just saw. She knew Tom didn't deserve this. She couldn't take her eyes off him. Tom raised the glass to his lips and finished his drink in one gulp. He reached for his wallet, but the bartender said the drinks were in the house. Tom got up from his chair and walked straight towards Katie. "That was low, Katie, even for you. Did you enjoy watching me get humiliated? I promised that I would not bother you again, and I kept my word. And now you're making it happen. You and he are perfect for each other," he said with an expression of disgust. Katie spoke hastily. "I didn't know anything about this. You have to believe me. I didn't know you'd be here, and I didn't know he'd do this. After what you did to me, why should I trust you? I don't trust you, and I don't like him," Tom said sharply. John returned to the table and said with a grin, "Are you still here?" Tom turned to him and just stared. Katie noticed her ex-husband's fingers curl into a fist. An episode from their marriage popped into her head. Once they were playfully wrestling, and she hit him with her fist. Then he stopped her and said that you should not hide your thumb inside your fist. You can break it with a strong blow. She watched as his thumb curled under his fist, positioned between the first and second knuckles of his index and middle fingers, just the way he had once taught her. They stood face to face, and Katie thought she saw fear in John's eyes. The waitress came over with Katie's cocktail and John's beer and said, "Tom, this is not the place for this." Without taking his eyes off John, Tom calmly replied, "Amanda, you're probably right." He backed away slowly, keeping his back to John until he was a safe distance away, then turned and walked out of the pub. Katie did not yet know that he was leaving her life forever. John followed Tom to the exit and watched him leave. Amanda put the drinks on the table and asked with contempt in her voice, "So you left Tom for that idiot? Do you even know that this is the third time he's done this to Tom?" She shook her head and walked away. When John returned to the table, he looked annoyed. "What did he talk to you about?" he demanded. Katie was furious, but before she could respond, a man approached their table. "I don't know if you remember me, but I was at your wedding with Tom." Katie was confused. "Sorry, but I don't remember you." "I'm Tom's friend Paul. Was there with his wife Phyllis. I gave Tom something during the feast." Katie suddenly remembered. "You're the one who came to our table while we were eating fruit salad and put a cherry in Tom's cup, saying that now he'll have one today." Everyone laughed then. She smiled. "Yes, I remember. Cherries. How are you, Paul?" "I'm fine, Katie," he replied, and then turned to John. "I am the owner of this place. Dinner at my expense. But when you're done, leave immediately. You are no longer welcome here." Katie blushed with embarrassment. John just grinned. Paul added, looking directly at John, "I have to warn you, Tom will not cause a scene in my bar. But if you cross paths with him again in another place, run. Next time he won't be so reserved." John snorted disdainfully. "I'm not afraid of that coward." Paul smiled. "Then don't say you weren't warned." He turned around to leave, but turned around and added with a grin, "Hopefully I'll be there to see it." Katie finished her dinner in silence. She was angry with John. She understood that it was all a setup to humiliate Tom. The food was great, and she was sad that she wouldn't be able to come back. She was also sad that because of John she had lost the opportunity to renew her acquaintance with Paul and Phyllis. And finally, John didn't even leave a tip. That night, Katie and John had their first serious fight. John was just being himself. He was angry. He couldn't understand why she sided with this weakling. John just wanted to show her ex-husband who Katie belonged to. He was claiming his rights. He made it clear to Tom to stay away, although deep down he doubted that he could push him away if necessary. At this stage, Katie was sure he couldn't. If Tom wants, then nothing will stop him. With a mixture of sadness and relief, she no longer believed that he was interested. The sadness was in the realization that this stage of her life was finally over, and the relief was in the understanding that there would be no violence. Remembering all this, Katie felt tears running down her cheeks. The pain John felt then, she felt now. The memories became more and more painful for her. But despite this, she felt like she had to keep sorting through the boxes until she found the last red box. A week has passed. Katie was at work when she heard the agency door open. She looked up to see who had entered and, to her horror, saw Tom's cousin, Janice. The same Janice to whom Katie once admitted that she loved Tom and would never hurt him. Janice looked very professional, a gray pinstripe suit, a skirt with a jacket, and a white shirt. She walked confidently towards Katie with an annoyed expression on her face. In her left hand, she carried a leather briefcase. "You're not very good at keeping your promises, Katie, are you?" she hissed. "Sorry, Janice," Katie said quietly. "I didn't want it to happen like this. It just happened that way." Janice looked at the nameplate on her desk, picked it up, and looked at it inquisitively. "It's you. Are you still Katie Holden?" "Yes," Katie answered. "Great," Janice said. She put her briefcase on the table, took out a white folder, and threw it in front of Katie. "You have been given documents." Then she took out a black box and threw it forcefully on top of the folder. "You stupid, lying bitch. You hurt him. Strongly. He was too good for you. You know that, right?" Her voice rang with anger. "His heart is broken. But don't worry. He will find someone else who will heal his wounds. I'm sure one day you will crawl back to him, pathetic and useless to anyone. And guess what? He will most likely accept you. That's why I hope that by then he will already have another woman to take your place." Janice leaned a little closer and added with a cold grin, "Oh yes, by the way, you should listen to the CD. I've already listened to him. He's wonderful. My cousin was always too good for you." She turned sharply and headed towards the exit. "Wait!" Someone's voice rang out. Katie saw her colleague Grace stand up and walk over to Janice. She stood with her back to her, hiding her expression. They spoke for a few seconds before Janice nodded. Katie saw Grace pass something to Janice. She looked at Katie, her lips stretched into a smile. Then she looked back at Grace, nodded again, and turned around and walked out, chuckling quietly. When Grace returned to her desk, Katie thought she was smiling too. Katie opened the box and took out the disc. This time there was no note, no letter, nothing. Only Rose and Lisa came to listen to him with her. "Do you want to turn it on now or wait until the end of the working day?" asked Lisa. Janice said he was wonderful. "Why not turn it on now?" Katie answered. She put the disc into the player on her desk, and the Garth Brooks song started playing the dance. It really was beautiful. Remembering the dance that we danced under the starry sky. For a moment, the whole world was perfect. How could I have known that one day you would say goodbye? Holding you in my arms, I held the whole world. At least for a moment, I was a king. If I had known that the king would fall. Who knows, maybe I could change everything. But now I'm glad I didn't know how it would end. I could have avoided the pain. But then I would have missed this dance. Rose and Lisa cried without hiding their tears. In the office, many women also wiped their eyes. They all liked Tom, and now he said that, despite the pain, he does not regret the past. Katie didn't understand it then. Now I understand too well. It hurt, but the journey was worth it for what they had. Why didn't she realize this before? She put the disc back into the box and carefully placed it in the case. Katie will only meet Tom one more time, after the divorce is officially finalized. She brought the papers to her lawyer. Everything was divided 50-50ths except his business. Tom refused to give her anything. Katie didn't care. She was going to become the doctor's wife. Let him keep his company. She signed the papers. A month after the 6-month waiting period ended, Kathy and John were married. John's practice was going well. He hired 2 nurses, a secretary, and an accountant. He and Kathy sold their apartment and bought a beautiful house in the same neighborhood where Tom lived, just a few blocks from his home on Kensington Street. As the clinic grew, John was increasingly late at work. Katie didn't like it, but she understood that his patients came first. "I took the Hippocratic Oath, Katie," he told her. "I have patients who need help." Then he grinned and added, "And besides, they pay the bills." That Friday evening, his secretary called Kathy and said that the doctor would be late. He had several more patients and could not leave work so soon. Katie was disappointed. Tonight she made chicken cacciator with pasta for John. She decided to be the good wife, like in the TV show, and pack him dinner to take him to the office, let him eat something delicious. When she arrived at the office, she was surprised to see only 2 cars in the parking lot. One belonged to John, and she did not recognize the second. She got out of the car, took the container with dinner, and walked to the office door, trying to open it. To her surprise, the door was locked. But this is not a problem. She has her own key. Balancing the food in one hand, she reached into her purse with her other hand to fumble for her keys. Finally, she found them, opened the door, and was about to call John. But then she heard sounds coming from one of the observation rooms, and her heart sank. This was not an ordinary conversation between a doctor and a patient, but the sounds of passion between 2 people. She grabbed the doorknob and quickly opened the door. Katie couldn't believe her eyes. Lying on the examination table was an elderly, clearly bleached blonde woman. John was completely naked and stood at the foot of the table, his hips rhythmically moving back and forth. He was clearly having sex with this prostitute. They didn't even notice her appearance. Katie screamed, What's going on here? With that, she threw a container of chicken caxiator at the couple. Food flew everywhere. The chicken fell right between the woman's flabby breasts, and the spaghetti sauce covered them both. Slamming the door loudly, Katie ran out of the office, got into her car, and started the engine. And suddenly, to her surprise, she began to laugh. She imagined this ridiculous picture John and his new passion smeared with sauce. But then another thought crept into her head. Chicken caxiator with pasta. This was the first dish that she once prepared for Tom. Katie started the car and drove away quickly. She didn't know what to do. She didn't want to go home right away. Then she dialed her friend Lisa's number. "Lisa, I urgently need to talk. I had a fight with John." Lisa replied that she was with the girls from the insurance agency at the bachelorette party, and only Rose was still left with her. They were in a pub on Easton Avenue. "Oh," Katie sighed heavily. "They don't let me in there anymore. Let's meet outside." "Okay, we'll wait for you," Lisa agreed. Katie said she would be there in 20 minutes. "There's just one more thing," Lisa warned. "Tom is here too, with a girl." Katie hesitated but answered, "I don't care. I just want to talk." "Okay, we'll wait," Lisa repeated. While Katie was driving, she thought about Tom. Now she saw everything through his eyes. She experienced the same thing he experienced that terrible night. Now she knew what it was like to feel pain and humiliation. She went to her best friends for support. But once, having betrayed Tom, she herself was his best friend. Who could he then go to for comfort? Who could I talk to? She knew the answer. No one. He endured this alone. When Katie pulled up, she opened the car door so Lisa and Rose could get in. Her shoulders were still shaking from quiet sobs. As soon as the friends sat down, Lisa immediately asked, "What's happened?" Katie could hardly speak, but having calmed down a little, she finally told them everything. "I found some 40-year-old dyed blonde with huge silicone breasts on the examination table, and my husband, who served her." Lisa and Rose looked at each other, but didn't look surprised. They always thought John was a jerk, and were more surprised that Katie didn't notice it for so long. They supported her, but were not going to cut her any slack. Rose said sternly, "What goes around comes around." I know," Kathy moaned. "Don't think I didn't think about it. I feel betrayed and humiliated by what John did, but I never thought like that about what I did to Tom. Now I know the truth. Now I know what it's like to be betrayed and humiliated. When you lose something that seems special. When you realize that it didn't mean anything to the other person. Now I know." Lisa and Rose looked at each other. They no longer needed to attack Katie. She was destroying herself. Rose asked, "So what now?" Katie shook her head. "I do not know. I'm so confused." But after a few moments, she suddenly said firmly, "I'm driving home. I have to face this head on. What he did is unacceptable, and this must stop. Do you want us to go with you?" Lisa suggested. "No," Katie shook her head. "I have to do it myself." Her friends got out of the car and watched her go. When they returned to the pub, Tom was just ordering drinks. When he saw them, he smiled widely. "Rose, Lisa, I'm so glad to see you. How many years? Almost a year." He hugged them in turn, but they only limply returned his hug, not even smiling. Tom immediately noticed the change in their mood and stepped back. "Sorry," he said, puzzled. "I didn't think it was that bad. I guess I'll go." He had already turned around, but Lisa called out to him. "Tom, wait. It's not what you think. We need to talk to you." Tom looked at her in surprise. "Should I talk? About what?" Lisa and Rose offered to sit at the table, but Tom first approached his companion, said something to her, and she, after a short pause, nodded and smiled. Tom returned and sat down opposite his friends. "So what's going on? Why such a cold reception?" Rose sighed. "It's about Katie." Tom immediately leaned back as if he had just heard a snake hiss. His expression instantly changed. "What does she have to do with this?" he asked warily. "She just caught John cheating tonight," Lisa blurted out. His face said it all. At first it became completely empty, Then a small smile appeared, which grew into a huge one, and then he completely burst into loud laughter. When he finished laughing, he leaned forward, lowered his head, shook it from side to side, and said, Karma is such a bitch. Then he looked at the women and, still chuckling, asked, Why are you telling me this? What does this have to do with me? None, Rose replied. We just wanted you to know why we're so depressed today. Tom's mood changed again. Sorry, girls, I jumped to conclusions. I should have known better. So where is she now? He asked. She went home to deal with him, Lisa replied. This is definitely a bad idea. John is a coward, but if he gets angry, he won't be afraid to raise his hand against a defenseless woman, Tom said. Rose's eyes flashed with anger. If he's a coward, then why didn't you fight for her when you had the chance? She asked sarcastically. Tom leaned back in his seat again, but without the same disgust. Finally, he leaned forward again, and his face showed deep sadness. I asked her if she loved him. She said yes. She said she didn't love me anymore. What did I have to fight for? If I beat him, would that bring her love back? No, she would hate me even more. What would be the point? I found myself in a situation where I was losing anyway. She wouldn't love me anyway, and I could go to jail. Now do you understand why I did what I did, Rose? Tom asked. Rose nodded, feeling ashamed of her question. So what are you going to do? Asked Lisa. Tom remained unmoved. Me? I'm not going to do anything at all. She's not my problem anymore. You can't say that. You once loved her, Lisa reminded. It was a long time ago. Time passes, people change, Tom objected. Now Rose spoke. I know you, Tom. I've known you for 5 years. I talked to Paul about you. Surprised? Not worth it. You are highly respected here. I heard stories about you from your friends at this bar. You have a lot of them, don't you? Even if you have a quarrel with someone, you still help if they need it. Katie was your best friend, and even after she hurt you so much, you wouldn't leave her. Maybe it's your upbringing, or maybe it's your military training, but you don't abandon people. You don't change, Tom Holden, not you, Rose said, looking him straight in the eye. Tom also looked into her eyes and answered, Rose, this is a family matter. This is something that should be decided in court. Honestly, I don't see how I can help. To some extent, it seems to me that this is her well-deserved punishment. What she sowed, she now reaps. If she ever really needs me and I can help her, consider that I will do it. What I told you back in the parking lot still applies. If someone hurts her or tries to, I want to know about it. But this is not the case. Yes, he hurt her, but no more than she hurt me. Ultimately, girls, I am not going to interfere in their family dispute. Maybe they can survive this. Maybe she will fight for this marriage, not the way she fought for me. Maybe he'll realize his mistake and won't do it again. Maybe she'll forgive him. I don't know. But it's none of my business, Tom insisted. There was an awkward silence. Tom was the first to break it. Girls, it would be nice to see you under different circumstances. I hope if we meet again, we can have a drink and a laugh. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a date. Tom left the booth, but as he walked away, he turned around and confirmed. Remember, if anything bad happens, let me know. Both women nodded in response. They watched as he returned to his table. His companion said something, and he began to speak. At some point, he grinned, and then the girl put down her fork and clearly scolded him. Lisa and Rose realized that he had told her what had happened and laughed at the thought of Katie's situation. At this moment, his companion became angry with him. Tom lowered his head, shook it up and down, left and right, and then just froze, staring at his plate. When the girl finished, she put her hand on his and smiled. One could easily read her lips. I understand. Tom lost his appetite and pushed his plate away. Meanwhile, Lisa and Rose wondered how Katie spent that evening. On Monday and Tuesday, Katie took sick leave. Lisa was worried, but did not want to interfere. Like Tom, she considered it a family affair. Besides, she had already gotten burned once by interfering in Katie and John's romance. She wasn't going to repeat the mistake. On Tuesday, she called John's office. He was working. So they didn't try to settle the problems at home. Lisa called Katie on her cell phone and left a message asking her to call back. Katie never called back. Lisa and Rose decided to go to her house if she didn't show up on Wednesday. When Katie pulled into the parking lot at 9:05, the girls breathed a sigh of relief and sat down to work. But when Katie walked into the office, they were shocked. Neither dark glasses nor a thick layer of makeup on her right cheek helped hide the bruises around her left eye. Lisa and Rose immediately took her to the women's restroom and closed the door. Lisa tore her glasses off her face and gasped. Katie's left eye was bruised. There was still a slight swelling at the bottom of the eye. Lisa looked closely at her cheek and could see the palm and 5-finger print from the slap John gave her with his open hand. Katie was unfazed. Apparently, she had no more tears left. Rose asked, "What's happened?" She started crying. Her tears are not over yet. Finally, Katie stopped and told the women what happened. When she came home, John was already there. He immediately shouted at her, "Where have you been? Who were you talking to? How could you throw this disgusting food at us?" This was an important client. Katie interrupted him. "So important that you had to sleep with her on the examination table?" John was furious. He swung and hit Katie in the eye. Katie screamed and fell to the floor. She had never experienced such pain. She was almost knocked out. John grabbed his wife by the hair, lifted her head, and hit her right cheek with all his might. Katie saw a flash before her eyes, and then nothing. When she came to, John was raging in the house. He broke trinkets and kicked furniture and walls. Seeing Katie move, he leaned over her again, grabbed her by the blouse, and lifted her up. "Now everything will be like this," he roared. "If I want to stay late at work, you just have to deal with it. If you don't like it, you can leave if you dare, and if you give me problems, you will get even more than today," he shouted. "Do you understand me?" Katie was scared to death. She cringed and nodded. "Great," he growled. "Now go upstairs and clean yourself up." Katie went into the bathroom and splashed cold water on her face. Looking in the mirror, she saw that her eye and cheek were already swollen. Walking into the kitchen, Katie pulled out a bag of frozen peas from the freezer. Going upstairs, she lay down and put it to her face. The next morning, Katie woke up wearing the same clothes as the day before. The peas had melted and lay under her head. Katie went to the bathroom and was shocked. Her face was completely swollen. All day, she applied something cold to relieve the swelling. John was nowhere to be seen. Katie was glad she didn't want to see him. John didn't show up until Sunday afternoon. He didn't give any explanation as to where he was, and she didn't ask. That evening, he wanted sex. Katie refused. She was too sick. He just left again. On Monday, he returned only to take a shower and change clothes, and then went to the office. The women listened silently. At first, I was in complete shock, and then furious at his cruelty. Lisa said insistently, "Go to the police and report him for assault and battery." "No," Katie cried. "I want to save this marriage. I want to fix everything. I've already ruined one marriage." The women exploded. "He beat you," Rose screamed. "He treated you meanly. Do you think this was the last time?" "I know," Katie replied, "but I can't give up right away." Lisa snorted angrily. "I don't know what to do. I give up." She left. Rose left too, but before leaving, she discreetly took a photo with her phone. She knew exactly what she was going to do. Rose left work half an hour early. She immediately went to Tom's auto repair shop. I parked the car in front of one of the open boxes and headed towards the entrance. Tom worked on a 1964 Jaguar XK. Noticing Rose drive up, he wiped his hands on a rag and smiled as she got out of the car. Rose didn't see him right away at that time of day. He was in the shadow of the workshop. When he emerged from the darkness, she was once again struck by how attractive he was. His muscular body always impressed her. He walked confidently with a wide smile. Rose thought Katie was crazy for turning him down. Even the way he wiped his hands with a white rag seemed sexy as hell to her. Good to see you, Rose. Is there something wrong with the car? No, that's not the point. I need to talk to you alone. Can I? He was surprised, but nodded. Certainly. Let's go to the office. Rose followed him. Tom sat down at his small, cluttered desk and motioned her to the chair opposite. They sat silently. He waited for her to start talking. Rose didn't know how to speak. Finally, she simply blurted out, "Katie has problems with John." Tom's neutral expression changed first to anger, then to contempt. "Any problems with this bastard are no longer my problem, and thank God that she is no longer my woman." He began, but stopped suddenly. Even if he considered her a woman of easy virtue, he could not talk about Katie like that. Tom sighed wearily. "Rose, I don't care. What problems do they have there? What does this have to do with me? Do you remember the day when you met us at work?" she asked. "When did you give her the box with the Beatles song?" "Yes, I remember." He smiled bitterly. "It didn't work, did it? Nothing worked. Even a call from that bitch." He fell silent, then suddenly blurted out, "She tore my heart out." "So what now? Should I worry about her? Was she worried about me when she left me?" Tom was angry. Rose was taken aback by his outburst. Perhaps she was mistaken. Maybe he really thought she deserved it to be beaten by her lover. Maybe his love turned to hate. Maybe he didn't care about her anymore. She continued decisively, "It's not just like that." She took out her phone, scrolled to the photo from that morning, and handed the phone to him. She tried to read his expression, but saw no emotion in him. Not the slightest hint of what was going on behind his emotionless mask. "When did you take this off?" he asked. "This morning," Rose answered. He looked at the photo for a few more seconds and handed the phone back to her. "This is bad. What do you want from me?" he asked. Rose was amazed at his indifference. "Are you not going to do anything? What about what you told Lisa and me? You said that if someone hurts her, we have to tell you. She was in pain, or was it just idle chatter?" She cried. "Call the police, Rose. This looks like assault and battery." Rose flushed with anger. "That's all. Is that all you can say?" Tom shrugged. "What do you want to hear? Do you expect me to defend her honor? She has no honor. She had an affair. She broke her vows. She didn't care about me. She didn't care about my pain. Give me one good reason why I should care about her suffering. Just one, Rose. At least one." She looked into his eyes and saw pain in them. "Because you love her. I can see it in your face. Isn't this enough?" Rose said softly. "Sorry, Rose, but you're wrong. I loved her once, a long time ago, but not now. The feelings I have for her are definitely not love. Not anymore. Tell her to call the police." "I'm not interfering in this," he answered coldly. Rose looked at him for a long moment, then shook her head. She stood up and headed towards the exit, but already at the door, turned around. "You surprised me today. I thought better of you. I would never believe that you would allow some man to beat his wife." Tom stood up sharply. For the first time that day, Rose saw a flash of anger in his eyes. "That's the whole point. She is not my wife. If she were my wife, I would die, but I wouldn't let some bastard touch her. But she chose him. I was her husband. But she preferred him. Apparently, she wanted to change her status to become the wife of a doctor and not the wife of a mechanic. She made her choice. Let him now live with its consequences." Tom barked with pain in his voice. Rose sighed. "Sorry, Tom. I didn't know you were worried about it this much, and I don't blame you. She must have hurt you badly," she said sympathetically. "Tell her to go to the police, Rose, and let him file for divorce. She already knows how to do it. I'm sorry if I disappointed you, but I just can't," he replied. Rose left the workshop, and Tom followed her. He stood at the gate, watching her get into the car. "Sorry for disturbing you today. I hope I didn't ruin your evening," she said before starting the engine. Tom said nothing. Rose looked at him through the windshield again. His face was difficult to read. Pain, anger, contempt, hatred. She couldn't understand. Maybe he felt it all at once. But no matter what he felt, he decided not to help. Rose started the car and drove away. Katie, you ruined everything she thought. She was so sure that Tom would help, but today she failed. And now Rose didn't know how to help Katie. Katie came to work on Thursday and Friday. There were no visible bruises, but she became increasingly nervous. The girls did not know whether she was being physically abused, but they were sure that she was being bullied. But on Monday, Katie changed. Everyone noticed this. She said hi to everyone and even smiled for the first time in a long time. Lisa and Rose grabbed her by the hand and dragged her into their shrine, the ladies' room, after which they locked the door. "What happened, Katie? What happened?" asked Lisa. "John was beaten on Friday evening in front of his office. They beat me very badly. Whoever did this made him promise that he would apologize to me. John said the attacker threatened that if he didn't apologize, he would find out and come back to finish what he started. Whatever that means. John doesn't know who it was, but I know," Katie said happily. "How do you know?" Rose asked. "I heard him swearing in the shower over the weekend." "He cursed my ex-husband, Tom," Katie said with a chuckle. "How could he know about this?" Lisa was surprised. "It's me. I told him on Wednesday after work," Rose admitted. Katie hugged her tightly. "Thank you, Rose. I made a decision. I'm leaving John. Tomorrow I'm going to see a lawyer and will file for divorce." Rose smiled. "Don't thank me. I wasn't the one who beat the crap out of your husband." Katie thought about it. "Maybe you're right. I should thank him personally." "I don't know, Katie. Now he is not in the best mood towards you." "You didn't hear what he was saying about you when I came to him," Rose warned. "I know, Rose. After what I did, he probably hates me. But I still have to thank him. It's the least I can do," Katie said firmly. Rose and Lisa agreed. Lisa was the first to enter the Easton Avenue pub, followed by Rose and Katie bringing up the rear. They took a table just a few steps away from him. Tom sat at the bar, thoughtfully sipping his second gin and tonic. He didn't even notice how they entered. Lisa nudged Katie in the side, urging her into action. A nervous Katie trembled slightly as she approached her ex-husband. She sat down in the empty seat next to him and noticed his bandaged and swollen right hand. She saw that there were scratches on his left hand, but not serious enough to prevent him from lifting the glass. He still didn't notice that someone sat down next to him. His thoughts that night were somewhere far away. Katie gently placed her hand on his bandaged arm and said, "It must be very painful." His head remained motionless, but his eyes slid to the right, and he saw her. "It's not that bad. It'll get better in a couple of weeks." "What do you want, Katie?" he asked, not in the most friendly tone. "Please," Katie begged, "I just want to talk, not fight." "Is this possible?" He nodded. Katie noticed that he did not remove her hand from his. He didn't because he actually still craved her touch despite the pain. Katie began, "I want to thank you for what you did on Friday. I know it was you. After everything I've done, you still helped me when I needed someone there. I felt like I should come and thank you personally. I owe you this." She looked at his handsome profile without a single trace of the fight with John. Katie put her hand on his chin and turned his face towards her. "You can't even look at me." His face was clean, without a single scratch. "He couldn't hit you even once, right?" asked Katie. "He thought you were a weakling, but you knew that wasn't true, right? I was worried about you. Probably shouldn't have." "I think he was mistaken about me," Tom said with a sad smile. Tom pulled his head out of her hand, turned away, raised the glass to his lips, and took a sip of the clear liquid. "I'm leaving him, Tom," Katie admitted. "I'll live with Lisa until I find my own place. I'm filing for divorce from John. I want to be with you again if you let me. I realized that I had acted stupidly. I finally realized who my true love is, and it's you. I desperately want back what we had. I want you back if you accept me." He finally turned to Katie, removing his bandaged hand from under hers. "Did you want to thank me?" He grinned evilly. "There was no need for that. I would do the same if I saw a man beating a stray dog on the street. Were you worried? Unlikely. Were you worried that morning when you left me alone in the house to go to that bastard? Have you ever thought about my pain, about what I am going through?" No, all that mattered to you was what you wanted. Why do you suddenly care? You got what you wanted. He laughed bitterly. Ah, but I understand. Why be with a simple car mechanic if you can become a doctor's wife, right? You just used me like everyone else. You got everything you could from me. What did I get? Even more pain. My arms hurt like hell. My girlfriend is furious and will most likely leave me to help you. I could go to jail for my actions. Tomorrow you'll have a new, long-lost lover in your bed, and the only company I'll have left is my pain. Why don't you go away, all three of you, and leave me alone? Katie shook her head, denying each of his accusations. Tom looked into her eyes intently. Just go away. Katie's face paled at his words. She didn't even realize how much pain he was in. Now it was easy to see it in his eyes, to read it in his facial expression. Until John started beating her, she never really thought about what Tom went through. Now she finally understood. John did to her what she did to Tom. Now she knew what pain, betrayal, and humiliation were. Yes, now she realized everything. But what should she do now? Katie opened her mouth to speak, but he waved his bandaged hand sharply, silencing her. If you don't leave, I'll leave, he said. He quickly jumped off the bar stool and cast a disapproving glance at Rose and Lisa as he walked by, then walked out the door. Katie was shocked. She looked at her friends with a confused expression. Run after him, Katie, Lisa begged. The women ran outside, but only had time to see Tom driving away in his pickup truck. They went to Lisa's to discuss what happened that night. Neither of them were happy with the way things turned out. Katie took out the last of the blue boxes. She opened it. There was no note inside. She inserted the disc into the player and Randy Travis' voice began to speak. I'd say I love you. I'm tired of being alone. That I finally realized my mistake. And I want to return home. When the song started playing, Katie remembered. It was Wednesday evening. Lisa and Katie picked up the mail. Among the letters was a small package addressed to Katie. She immediately knew from the handwriting what it was, and from whom, even despite the lack of a return address. She peeled off the brown wrapping paper and saw another blue box. When they entered Lisa's apartment, she asked, Katie, are you going to listen to the CD? Katie nodded. She couldn't speak without bursting into tears. Lisa took the disc and inserted it into the player. Randy Travis' voice filled the room. I told you, that one day you'll crawl back. You will beg to be accepted. But now I have another one, and you will never break my heart again. Katie's heart shattered into pieces, just like that night in Lisa's apartment. Tom made it clear that he was done with her. He would never let her back into his life again. For the first time in a long time, Katie burst into uncontrollable crying. Everything she had been holding in came out. All her pain came pouring out. Oh, how she missed her ex-husband. She realized what a fool she had been to refuse him. Lisa warned her then. Katie cursed her stupidity. Katie quit her job at the insurance company shortly after receiving a package in the mail from Tom. She got a job as a receptionist at a local clinic. The salary was not so high, but she no longer had to endure disgusted looks and constant whispers from her colleagues. Katie lived with Lisa for 3 months. She then rented a small apartment from an elderly patient she met at the clinic. The process of her divorce from John moved through the courts. She began receiving alimony from John, and along with her salary, it was enough to pay the rent. But Katie didn't sit idly by in her attempts to win Tom back. She called him many times. He never answered, and she left messages begging him to call back. Tom didn't answer. This only made Katie even more persistent. She began sending letters to the address in Kensington where he still lived. Letters, emails every few days. There were no answers. On Friday, Katie and Lisa had plans to go out. It was decided that Katie would pick up Lisa and they would prepare at her home. When they arrived at Katie's apartment, they were surprised to find Tom's cousin, Janice, and Katie's former co-worker, Grace, waiting for them in the parking lot. What are they doing here? Lisa was surprised out loud. I have no idea, but I don't like seeing Janice again. And what is Grace doing here with her? Katie frowned. Lisa guessed why they came. She was hiding something from Katie. The girls got out of the car and carefully walked towards Janice and Grace. Janice waited until they were close and spoke first. "Hi, Katie," Janice began. "Grace and I would like to talk to you about something that concerns us all. Can I go inside and talk privately?" Katie became wary. She remembered her last conversation with Janice and didn't want a repeat of that confrontation. "What are we talking about, Janice?" "I don't want any problems," she replied. "Why don't you just leave her alone? Why reopen old wounds?" Lisa begged. Grace looked at Lisa and Katie with sympathy before speaking. "I would love to, Lisa, but I think Katie should know this." "Please, Katie, can we come inside and talk?" Grace asked. Katie was completely confused. She looked at Lisa for a clue. Lisa nodded, saying, "Let's go in." With concern in her voice, Katie said, "Okay, come in." Inside, the girls exchanged pleasantries and praised the atmosphere. But Grace soon got down to business. "Katie, I have something to tell you, and you probably won't like it. I know you sent letters and emails to Tom. I know about the calls, too. And what do you care about this? I have the right to contact him. This is a free country. If I want to call him, I will call him. He never told me to stop. If I had said so, I would have stopped." "He wants you to stop," Grace replied. "He's too polite to tell you that directly. He's afraid you won't take it well." "Katie," Janice interrupted, "just listen to us. We don't want to hurt you. We know you don't know this, but Tom and Grace are getting married next Saturday." Katie was shocked. Her eyes filled with tears. She wanted to say something, but couldn't. "Katie, please don't call, write letters, or send messages to Tom. I am a jealous woman, and I will not like it if another woman tries to contact my husband. It's a pity that you never understood the true meaning of the gift. But I understood the first time I heard it when I fell in love in your office," Grace added. Janice pulled out a thin red box from her bag and handed it to Katie. There was no malice in her voice when she said, "Listen to the disc inside. I am very sorry that everything turned out this way. We didn't want to hurt you, but you had to know the truth." When Janice and Grace left, Katie turned to Lisa. "Did you know about this?" "Yes," Lisa answered guiltily. "I didn't know how to tell you. Grace told us a few weeks ago. I knew you were trying to get Tom back. I knew how much it would hurt you. I couldn't say." Katie put the disc into the player. She took a sip of wine and looked at her watch. It was 14:30. It only took her an hour and a half to remember her journey with her ex-husband. She looked at the red box at the end of the row of boxes. "I took it, took out the disc, and inserted it into the player again, just like a week ago." The song started playing. Foolish Little Girl 1961 performed the Shirelles. "You broke his heart and made him cry. Since then, he has been miserable. Now he has found another. Do you want it back? Silly girl, flighty girl. You didn't want him when he wanted you. Now he loves someone else, and there's nothing you can do about it." Katie realized that Janice was right. Nothing can be returned. Everything that happened was her fault. By now, Tom and Grace may be walking away from the altar as husband and wife, or they stand in line greeting guests. Wherever they were, she no longer existed for them. And now she finally understood what kind of gift it was. "I realized that I had thrown it away so carelessly once. Knew that Grace saw it immediately when she heard it when I fall in love. It was the most precious gift. What she now sorely lacked. This gift is his love." And subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think, click to the next one.